Hello, YouTube. It's Gavaguy. I tried to invite Matthew Bell to this hangout, um, but apparently he didn't have time tonight. Um, I I've changed the title of this hangout, and really it's just going to be me. I'm not going to post links. Because I just want this to kind of be a brief discussion, and just kind of get my thoughts out related to the hangout last night, and just specifically to the portion in which Matthew Bell participated. Um, and I'll post a link to that hangout in the description of this hangout, or the video when this is finished. Matthew Bell hopped into my hangout last night, and the title of it led Matthew to believe, that it was going to just be an open discussion about things, and I should have changed it so that it reflected what the reality was. But I had, between the time that I initiated the hangout and the time that I went live in the hangout, I had kind of changed the direction of it and had more or less an outline of certain issues that I wanted to discuss. And at any rate, Matthew heard one assertion that I made and jumped on that assertion and just kind of relentlessly pounded on it, insisting that I'm ignorant and that I was not being honest in my claim that I've studied and looked at various Christian apologetics and arguments for the existence of God and things like that. And he threw out one of his kind of pet arguments and basically said, "Well, do you know, or do you recognize this argument on contingency and things?" And he caught me off guard because it wasn't along the lines of the issue that I was trying to discuss. It was complete tangent, and it didn't. The way he phrased it didn't ring a bell at first. I recognized it very quickly as the Leibnizian argument for the cosmological argument for the existence of God, and I've heard that. I've heard it presented by more than one person in a couple different times. I've read through it myself. I've heard Matthew present it before. I've heard some other philosophers, and I've read online about it. It doesn't impress me. To me, it doesn't greatly change things from, "Hey, Matthew, you're here." I wasn't gonna bad talk you at all, but I'm glad you were able to make it. Do you have time to talk for a little while?
Hello,
Hey,
can you hear me?
yeah. I'm glad you were able to make it. Or do you have time to talk for a few minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sound is very bad here.
So I was just saying that I've heard the Leibnizian argument, the cosmological argument for the existence of God, on a few different occasions. I've heard it presented by a number of different people, including you. So this was an argument that I was familiar with, and it wasn't a gap in my knowledge or understanding.
You haven't heard me present the Leibnizian cosmological argument as you claim, because I've never presented it. So that's.
I've heard you discuss it in other hangouts.
I've only referred to it in passing. I've never presented it as an argument. I don't know
Okay.
what you're saying that from. Can you still hear me? Oh,
Yes, I can hear you.
I can't hear you. I've never presented that argument in any hangout.
Okay. Maybe I'm mistaken then, but I've heard it presented by other people, and I've read about it online in the past.
So why did you say then
It's
it?
it's
Why did you say then it tries to define God into existence?
I was mistaken. I understand that's not true. It's
So where's the
more
flaw in the
similar to.
argument?
So hold on. To me, it's very similar to the Kalam cosmological argument.
It's nothing like the Kalam.
Uh,
The Kalam is based on an A theory of time. The Leibnizian's not.
okay.
That's a substantial difference between the two arguments. Do you know what the A theory of time is?
No.
Okay. So again, you say you know and you've studied these issues, but you don't even know what an A and B theory of time are, which is
Why is that
two
necessary?
different.
Like, listen,
Well, because if you it's necessary because the Kalam cosmological argument is based on a specific theory of time, and the Leibnizian cosmological argument is not based on a specific theory of time. So when you talk about the Kalam and the Leibnizian being similar arguments, they're not. They're entirely different. Like if someone said,
they
"Oh
both
wait,
posit
both posit
they
what?"
both posit ideas based on this idea that there has to be an end to a regression. The Kalam bases that on kind of causality and things, and the Leibnizian does it on a more abstract basis.
It's
But
not abstraction.
they
It's based on empirical facts. What's the empirical fact that the Leibnizian is based upon?
it all it does is trade out causality for contingency.
What is the empirical fact that the argument is based upon? The undeniable empirical fact.
That everything that we experience is contingent upon something else. Yes?
No, that contingent things exist. Do you
Okay.
deny that contingent things exist? Do you know what
Can you
contingent
define
means?
contingency? Can
Yeah,
you define contingency for
it
me?
means, yeah, contingency. Oh, again, the Leibnizian cosmological argument defines what it means in the argument by the word contingent. It means does not necessarily exist. So it can
Okay.
not exist. So I am not a necessary being. I can conceive, in fact, it's probable that I'm not going to exist, and I never existed before 1967. So I'm a
Right.
contingent being.
Okay.
That's is that a deniable premise in an argument that contingent things exist?
No, that's a true premise.
Right. So that's the opening premise of the Leibnizian cosmological argument, or the argument from contingent beings. It's based on an empirical fact. Contingent things exist.
Okay.
So where do you dispute the argument then? You don't deny that. So
I
which premise do you
I
deny?
it's the attempt to try and say that there has to be an end to the regress when
It
we
doesn't
don't
do
know that
that.
to be the case.
It doesn't
Okay.
do
Well, how
that.
does it?
Well,
So
you tell me. You said you know the argument.
I said I've heard it. I'm not an expert in this,
Right.
but
So you've heard the
again,
argument. But
here's
last
the point
night,
that I was going to
what
draw
you were
out before
claiming
you jumped
last
in here.
night
Can I?
is you were claiming last night that before you became a atheist, you did due diligence
That's not what I
on
said.
the best argument. All right, so you never done due diligence then.
No.
So
I
did you or
said
did you
that I
not?
had studied and done my best to try and understand and look for the arguments that were being posited and put forward by the people who were supposedly the experts from both sides.
And you never came
And I,
across the cosmological argument.
yes, I did, and
And you came
it didn't
across
impress
the
me.
Leibnizian one.
Yes, well, I did. I came across the Leibnizian argument before. I mean, after I should say, after I lost my faith.
Okay, so what? Right. So otherwise, prior to losing your faith, you never encountered one of the most popular, well-known theist arguments for theism. But your claim is that you did.
No, my
Which
claim
one
is
did that
only that
sort
of
of
the
study?
arguments that I heard, and
Heard from
when you
who?
say that it's popular, who advances this? Maybe in abstract,
William
esoteric.
Lane Craig
Uh,
advances this. Leibniz advanced this. It's a well-known
yes.
argument in philosophy. Richard Swinburne proposes this argument. David
Okay, but
Hume, a famous atheist philosopher, accepted all the premises and the conclusion of the argument from contingency. He was an
so
atheist.
how is he an atheist if he accepts that conclusion? And I don't even think.
Well,
Now I could be wrong about this, but I'm not sure that David Hume was an atheist. From what I know, he was closer to a deist.
no, he wasn't. He was an atheist.
Okay, well, that's irrelevant, I guess. Anyhow, but
So how could it? So what premise? I mean, the thing is, you don't even know the premises of the argument. That's the
you're
problem.
right. I don't. I
Exactly.
don't. But I've
So
heard
you
it
have no
before.
familiarity with an argument that you're saying is flawed and is like the
Okay.
Kalam.
Okay. Listen. Do you know every argument that is put forward by what's his name, Nephilim Free, on creationism and all of his arguments?
I'm aware of all the major arguments.
You're aware of
Well,
them,
I used to
but
be
can
an
you list out the
atheist. I
premises of
used
each
the
one of them?
argument myself. So there's
Can you
nothing, if
list
I
out
go
the
into a
premises?
discussion with Nephilim Free, he's not going to be able to present an argument I'm not aware of.
Okay, I'm aware of the Leibnizian argument,
Oh, so what's
and I've
the
heard
premises
it.
in it then?
I don't know it that well. I've heard
So
it on a
you're
number
aware
of
of the
occasions.
argument, but you're not aware of the premises in the argument, which is, I mean, you do know that an argument is constructed by its premises and the conclusion.
Yes.
So if you don't know the premises, how can you know the argument when the premises are the argument apart from the conclusion?
I've heard it posed
Right.
a number of
Heard it
times,
does not
and
mean
each
know
time
it.
that I've heard it,
Right. So you've heard it. Does it mean because
what do
you've
I need to
heard an
memorize it?
argument, you know it?
And is it given in the same exact form every time that it's delivered?
No, of course not, but in substantial form, yes. There's no substantial differentiation between the premises and the conclusion.
Okay, but each time it's presented, it's
what does that
probably
have to do with
worded
it?
slightly
As long as
differently.
the substance of the argument is the same, it doesn't need to be word for word.
So lay it on me.
Wait.
Are you looking it up?
No, I'm not looking it up. I'm fixing my headphones because I'm
Okay.
not. I don't need to look up something I know.
Okay.
You do. You should be looking up the argument.
I don't know it, and I
You
don't
should
claim
be
to know it. I
educating
claim to
yourself
have.
about the best
I
argument
claim-
for theism before being so arrogant as to declare theism as false.
That's not
just
what I
stupid.
did.
To declare something
That's not
as
what I
false
did.
when you haven't even familiarized yourself and know the evidence for it. Where's the rationality in that? Why is that a reasonable thing to do? If I reject
the same reason that I can reject the
and
ideas that
not
creationism
familiarize myself with
is
the evidence for evolution,
not a compelling
how would it be rational to do
description
this?
of our origins, when and that evolution is more compelling. And I'm not an expert in evolution, nor am I an expert in the kinds of creationist arguments and quote unquote facts that people like Nephilim Free and some of these other hardcore creation science people, and I use scare quotes around that, proffer and put forward.
I don't think you even know what the evolution stuff is about. You're just an ignoramus on these subjects. What is evolution?
What do you mean, what's evolution? Evolution is
between evolution and the theory of evolution.
It's the theory that is advanced by the biological sciences that explains the diversity and...
The same question again. What is the difference between evolution and the theory of evolution?
Evolution is the process itself, and the theory... Matthew, why do you want to do this?
Because you need to learn that you don't know half as much as what you need to know to be able to rationally embrace atheism. You need to recognize that you do not know theism. You do not know the arguments for theism. You have not studiously and done your due diligence on theism to be in a position to have rejected theism. And if you have an interest in truth, if you really have an interest in truth, then you would be doing that due diligence instead of posting rubbish on Google Plus and having hangouts on Google Plus, putting forward nonsense that you don't even know about. The evidence is all over the place that you don't know what you're talking about. It's like I said last night, you're at kindergarten level. No, the responsibility is upon you.
No, listen to me.
Is on you.
Is the Leibnizian argument for the cosmological argument for God, is that the best argument that exists out there for the existence of God?
They are two of the most popular and among the best. No, they're among the best. There isn't a best argument. In fact, if you realize how cumulative arguments work, you would realize the stupidity of that question.
I do realize how cumulative arguments work, and that is the reason that I ended up where I am.
So you can have based on what cumulative arguments did you embrace atheism? Now, what I mean by that is, what argument for atheism, what cumulative arguments for atheism persuaded you to become an atheist? Not what arguments against Christianity drove you from Christianity, but what positive arguments for atheism it made you rationally embrace atheism. Give me an example.
You don't need a positive argument for atheism.
So you don't have any positive arguments for atheism. So what you did was where did you critique? So what you did is you said, oh, you know what? All the arguments I've seen for theism fail. Therefore, I'm going to be an atheist. But
therefore, I don't believe that there is a God.
But that's non sequitur. That's like saying, hey, because I've not seen all the evidence for X doesn't exist. Or
no, that's not the case. I don't claim that X doesn't exist.
Right. So
I don't claim that God doesn't exist. I am an agnostic atheist.
An agnostic atheist is a stupid term. That just shows me that you've read too much internet gibberish, okay? The term agnostic, philosophically informed atheist, would refer to you as an agnostic. Not an agnostic atheist.
If you want to call me an agnostic, that's fine. I define these terms differently than you do.
Cool, but you're not No, again, listen to what I said. Philosophically informed atheists not theists like me, would not accept you as an atheist.
That's their problem.
All right, so people who know these arguments, people who know the arguments you don't know, people who are capable of presenting positive arguments for atheism as well as negative arguments against theism, who know the subject inside out, they have a problem. But you, who demonstrate the complete opposite, lack of knowledge about the best arguments for the existence of God, no arguments for atheism, you don't have a problem. And you think that's rational.
To me, agnosticism refers to what is possible to be known.
Who cares what it means to you? You don't define philosophical terms.
That's fine. I accept your rejection of my identification. If you want to refer to me as agnostic, and if that's...
It's not my rejection, it's your atheist betters. People who know the subjects, who could teach you inside out about atheism. People who could teach you why...
It's not that important to me.
And that, again, is the problem. You are not committed to the truth about theism and atheism. It's like side salad on your 3-course main. You can take it, you can leave it, doesn't really matter.
If there is a God out there who is interested in introducing himself to me, goodness. I am more than open to the idea.
Tell me this, what's begging the question? I mean, you said last night. Yeah, you said last night you took a degree, or you got a degree in philosophy. Philosophy teaches basic logic. So what's begging the question?
Begging the question is when your assertion assumes the thing that it's trying to claim, or your argument assumes the thing that you're trying to claim.
Right. So you just made the assertion. If God exists, then he is welcome to introduce himself to you. But that begs the question that he hasn't already done so through the argument that you don't know. So let's say there's
does God create arguments, or do people create arguments?
God is truth. On the hypothesis of God, God would be truth. And we arrive at truth through means of applying our reasoning to empirically existing objects and facts. So if you're looking
empirically existing arguments and facts.
No.
That doesn't sound like a philosophically sound phraseology.
Well, listen again to what I said. Empirically existing objects and facts to which we apply our reasoning. So the universe exists. That's an empirical fact. You deny that the universe exists?
Sure.
Cool.
I believe that the universe exists.
Fantastic. So we then apply our reasoning to the universe. Why does the universe exist? What's the origins of the universe? What's the best explanation for the universe? And it's from there we get other conclusions, and not just theists. Atheists apply themselves to the same question, and more importantly, cosmologists apply themselves every day to the same question. Why does it exist? How did it come about? All of those things, valid question. We do the same.
Are there questions that we won't be able to answer?
Yes, there is, but science never satisfies itself with, oh, we don't know. Science never stops looking for explanation. It never stops putting forward hypotheses. It never stops looking for explanations. And indeed...
But it also doesn't accept explanations just to give explanations.
For the origins of the universe, it has many models trying to explain its origins, its nature, and how it came to be. And of course science doesn't just accept any explanation, because science cannot follow the evidence. And it cannot follow the evidence because of something called methodological naturalism, which is the assumption that everything that exists is natural and has a natural explanation. Science is founded upon that.
I would define what you just used as philosophical naturalism. Methodological naturalism just says.
This is what I mean. You make the most stupid statement. You claimed last night.
Okay, what is philosophical naturalism then?
Philosophical naturalism is the assertion that everything that exists is natural, and only natural explanations exist. Methodological naturalism is a way of working. It's just a way of working. It's not an assertion.
Okay. That's not what it sounded like you were saying.
That's exactly what I said. I said methodological naturalism, which is the assumption that everything that exists is natural with natural explanation. That was my very words. Assumption, not assertion.
But I don't think that it needs to be an assumption that that's what's going on. The only thing that it needs to do is proceed.
That's the very definition of methodological naturalism. That's what distinguishes methodological naturalism from philosophical naturalism. That's why a Christian can be a scientist, and when they're working, they apply the assumption that only natural things exist. A Christian could never be a scientist if science operated on philosophical naturalism, because they could not accept philosophical naturalism, and indeed philosophical naturalism has never been able to justify its claim that only natural things exist, and has never been able to make itself to such an extent acceptable to the rational mind that it could replace methodological naturalism in science. So the National Academy of Sciences, for example, in America says, hey, on the question of the existence of God, science is neutral. That means they don't even look at the question, because it's excluded by methodological naturalism. They're only looking at the natural world, they're only looking for natural explanations, and that's all they're interested in. That's how science operates. So it will only ever produce for you natural explanations, not because naturalism is true, but that's the methodology that they operate on in order to do their work. If they didn't, they couldn't do any experiments, because every experiment they did, they would need to say, oh, wait a minute, what if an invisible pink unicorn was tampering with the results there? What if God was doing a miracle there, and he does them regularly every time we do an experiment? So it's a valid method in science that they use in studying the natural physical world. But it's not the same as philosophical naturalism, which you would know, of course,
we agree there.
if you studied the damn subject in any depth. But as you said,
I'm aware of that. Obviously, I knew the terms. I just didn't understand what the way you phrased it was not familiar to me. We're in agreement there.
Right. Okay. So the way I phrased it, and you mean actually giving the definition of the term methodological naturalism? I mean, what definition do you have of methodological naturalism?
Sounded to me that you were saying that methodological naturalism is the assertion that that only nature exists.
Right. So even though I
misunderstood
you. Even though I said assumption, you took that to be assertion.
Yeah. Well, you know what? You have a thick accent that
I won't comment
didn't necessarily pick up on.
I don't know.
I apologize. Obviously,
I won't comment.
I'm familiar with the terms enough.
Okay, so you just need to realize where you are on this situation. You're just not well enough informed on the subjects of atheism and theism and philosophy as you think you are. So you can.
Do you think that I'm more informed than a lot of people are? Than probably most of the people in the general public?
Yes. So what? That's not to a sufficient. That's not to a sufficient
That's
level.
all I was claiming in my hangout last night. That was the whole point that I was trying to make.
Cool. So what you're saying is this then. Hey, I'm not as thick as other people, so that gives me what? You're still thick on the subject.
No, it wasn't. I wasn't trying to put anyone down.
Exactly.
All I was saying is, you came into that hangout
Correct.
and just started trying to tear me from one end to the hangout to the other, based
Correct.
on something that you didn't even understand what the discussion was about.
I did. I fully understood what the discussion was about. You presenting yourself as something you're not.
No, that was not the point of the discussion.
No, that might not have been the point in your mind, but that was the point. You trying to present yourself.
That's the point you wanted to try and
that's the point. That's the point you're demonstrating again in this hangout. You want to present yourself as someone who knows about these subjects when it's clearly obvious just from looking at a couple of arguments that you do not know these subjects. Okay? So until you recognize that...
I don't claim to know the subject. I claim only to have looked at them and to have reached conclusions having looked at some of them.
Then you have no rational justification for being an atheist. All you have is the same kind of weak, silly, nonsensical, almost trivial reason that some people have for being a Christian. Oh, why are you a Christian? Well, you know, my mother and father, they were Methodists and they took me to church and I enjoy the social life. Okay, no good reason to be a Christian. Well, why are you a theist? Well, I'm a theist because I kind of think it's good to believe in God. It's kind of comforting to think that this exists, and no good reason to be a theist. So you're on the same level as those people. So there's no great accolades to be gained from being the thickest or the less thick of a bunch of thick people. Okay, you're still a thick person on those subjects. If you want to raise your game, the way to raise your game is to familiarize yourself with the philosophical arguments for atheism, the philosophical arguments for theism, where the problems lie in those arguments, and make an informed decision once you're aware of those arguments, which are readily available to anyone with internet access, and the important thing, the desire to do some decent, hard research into the subject. Something you've already said you don't have. Doesn't really matter to you.
Yeah, you're right. And the reason for that is if there's a God out there and he's only going to make himself known to people.
What if he doesn't want to? What if he doesn't want to make himself known? What if it's the God of deism?
That's fine, and I don't deny the fact that, or the idea that God could exist. But how can I tell the difference? Hold on. Let's talk about the God of deism. How can I tell the difference between the God of deism and a God that doesn't exist?
Through looking at the evidence. So you
what evidence?
Well, the philosophical arguments for the existence of a first creator of the universe.
I've looked at those arguments, and I think that they are...
Oh my fucking God. You've looked at those arguments in no depth at all worthy of talking about.
It's an argument. I can look at the premises and look at the conclusion and say that I think that it fails.
An argument is a line of evidence.
I don't have to memorize an argument in order to assess
or
evaluate it.
You need to know the fucking argument before you can comment on it intelligently. And that's what you lack. You cannot name me a single theistic argument that I could not rip you to shreds on your lack of knowledge on that argument. Not a single one. If you think
Hang on just a second. I'm sorry.
Name the argument.
Sorry, my son was asking me a question.
Okay, so name the argument that you think you know well. Any theistic argument that you have a good.
I don't claim to know them well. I claim to have looked at them, evaluated them, and decided that they did not make sense to me.
Right. So let's say we have a young Earth creationist, and they look at the evidence for evolution. Doesn't really make sense to me. So I'm not going to look too hard. I'm not going to do any research on it. I'm not going to spend any decent time on it. I'm not going to familiarize myself with the substance of the evidence. I'm just going to have a look at it, draw my conclusion, and reject evolution. You would be saying to that person, hey, no, you haven't done your due diligence on that subject. You've not. You've just said all you've done is looked at the arguments, the lines of evidence for the existence of God.
I've heard them presented many times by William Lane Craig.
Okay,
I've heard them presented
which argument have you heard present? Which argument have you heard William Lane Craig present which you understand?
I've heard him present the Kalam cosmological argument.
And you understand the Kalam cosmological argument. Is that your claim?
I understand.
Cool. So
the argument.
First premise of the argument, everything that begins to exist, okay? What does William Lane Craig mean by begins to exist? What does he said he means by begins to exist?
That doesn't seem like it's something that needs an explanation. It begins to exist.
And again, this is where the problem lies. There's a guy called Wes Morriston, okay? He's also a philosopher of religion. He challenged William Lane Craig on premise 1 of the argument. And he basically was attacking premise 1. And that necessitated that William Lane Craig clearly laid out exactly what he means by begins to exist.
I don't think it's necessary to get down into the weeds of the...
Okay. So a professional philosopher challenges a professional philosopher on a philosophical argument. So you think that professional philosopher who challenged William Lane Craig on that, if he was proven right, then what would that have meant for the argument?
I don't know. I haven't read that argument, but I don't need to.
So you don't know what William Lane Craig means by begins to exist. So let's continue. Whatever begins to exist has a cause. What does he mean by cause?
I've told you, this is not the depth at which I have gone into these arguments.
Exactly.
I've read them. I've heard them presented by the people in debates. I've read through them.
The problem is, this is the problem you have when William Lane Craig presents the Kalam cosmological argument. When he's doing that in a debate, more often than not, he tells people what he means by cause of the universe. He tells them what he means there. So you said you've watched these debates, you've heard Craig present it, but it's escaped your attention when he tells people, this is what I mean by that.
Yes.
Cool. So what happened to your knowledge of the Kalam cosmological argument? One premise.
Once again, you keep using the word the knowledge of the argument, and use
knowledge with understanding. You do not have a good understanding of the Kalam.
I'm not unfamiliar with the Kalam argument. I have heard it. I have read through it.
Do you claim to have a good understanding of the Kalam?
I claim to have... No, I don't claim to have a good understanding of it. Certainly not to the level that you do. I think that it's problematic because I think that...
I mean to the level where you know what's being said in the argument.
How many problematic premises or connections within an argument need to be bad in order for the argument to fail?
One.
Okay.
But to point out a flaw in the argument, you need to raise your game far higher than any debate opponent that you've watched with William Lane Craig. Because
all I need is one.
But you
one
don't
bad
have
connection
one.
Or one bad premise.
But you don't have any. That's the problem.
Sure I do.
No, you
don't. You haven't let me even talk about it.
Okay, but before you do that, there's a video online called The 10 Worst Objections to the Kalam Cosmological Argument. It's a video presentation by William Lane Craig where he picks out the 10 worst objections, the worst objections he thinks there is to his argument, and he then explains why they're so bad. Okay? So before you go and critique
I'll
it,
check that out.
yeah, and I would bet you $100 that when you go ahead now to present your objections to the Kalam cosmological argument, that one or more of those worst objections raise their ugly head. Because your only knowledge of the flaws of the Kalam cosmological argument, they don't lie in philosophically informed objections like Wes Morriston on premise 1. They lie on stupid internet videos, making stupid claims to have refuted the Kalam cosmological argument.
And the other issue with the Kalam is that, or the Kalam, I've always heard it pronounced Kalam. I don't know, but the other issue with it is the fact that it doesn't get you to the God of Christianity or the God of Islam or any other
Two things to say on
God.
that. Two things to say on that. We spoke earlier about begging the question. You just begged the question again. When you said this is what you said. The other issue with the Kalam. Wait a minute. You haven't established there's a first issue for there to be a second issue. So you're just assuming that there's a first issue.
Yes,
when you
I did have
you haven't established that there is a first issue. On the second issue that you raise, it's a stupid objection. Okay. And like I said, it's presented on the internet by equally stupid internet atheists as yourself, and here's why it's a stupid objection. The purpose of the Kalam cosmological argument is not to get you to a specific God, i.e. the God of Christianity or the God of Islam. The purpose of the Kalam cosmological argument, as presented by William Lane Craig, is to show that belief in a God is a rational conclusion. That's it. Right. That's the end of story with the Kalam. So there's no flaw.
So let's go.
When we finish, there's no flaw in the Kalam cosmological argument that it doesn't get you where it doesn't intend to get you.
That's fine. So let's go to the first objection that I skipped over because
the first objection you've read on the internet. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
The first objection that I would have to the Kalam is that I think it's no better than the God of the gaps.
Cool. So let's stop there, okay? When you say this, you just said the first conclusion you have. So are you claiming that this is purely from your own mind, or have you read this on the internet?
I've heard this argued, and I find this persuasive.
Cool. So, okay. So do you know people like Ozymandias, Ramesses, think people like that? Seth MacMullen?
Nope.
These are all people who do hangouts. They're atheists, like you. You should join their channels, actually. If they were in this, do you know Shanna Rocky?
Yes.
She's a deist, okay? People like that, okay? If they were in this hangout right now, they would be correcting you on what you just said. They, not me, but other atheists, would be saying to you, listen, that's not a persuasive argument at all. It's a very bad argument. The thing that the Kalam cosmological argument cannot be is a God of the gaps argument. Because at no stage in that argument does it just pop God in as the conclusion. Everything it postulates, it presents arguments for. It presents, first of all, the three premises. It's presented in a deductive form, so it's deductively sound argument. If the premises are true, the conclusion is most certainly true. There's arguments presented in support of premise 1. There's arguments presented in support of premise 2. If those arguments are persuasive, then the conclusion logically follows. When you get to the conclusion, there's further arguments presented to get you from the cause of the universe to God. Now,
I'm aware of that. I've heard William Lane Craig go through
oh,
this,
goodness.
and to me it seems like he lays out the and then does some shell shuffling and says, "Ta-da, God of the Bible."
Okay. So, okay, I want you to do something for me, okay?
Okay.
I want you to, I bet you $100, okay? $100 right now. If you can find me a single instance of William Lane Craig ever getting to from the Kalam
No,
to
he doesn't go from the
the God
column.
of the.
He specifically says.
You just said William Lane Craig. I've seen him present it, and he does the formal part. Then he does Shazam, the God of the Bible.
No, that's
He never does that.
He does shell shuffling and says, "Well, we need to do other things to get to the God of the Bible."
What other things? What other things do you need to do?
I don't recall exactly what he said. I know that at least in one instance, I heard him just allude to this other whatever it is, and
right.
kind of.
So would it be something like this? Okay, if the Kalam is true, if the premises are true, the conclusion naturally follows. We do an analysis of the cause of the universe. It has certain properties. Those properties match with the properties of God. Therefore, it's rational to believe that God exists. Now, to get us from there to the God of the Bible or the God of Christianity, we need to use other lines of evidence, other arguments, which he then presents. So again, where's the God of the gaps? Where's the just plugging God in without reasons or arguments or evidence?
The God of the gaps comes in when you try and say that everything that begins has or everything that exists has a beginning.
It doesn't say that.
No, you're right. I minced the words there.
So what does it say? Premise 1 of the Kalam.
Yeah, I can't recall exactly how it's worded, and it's worded very carefully because they're trying to. And you don't think already in the first premise they're trying to point to and leave an opening.
All right. Where are they doing that? Where are they doing that? Like when you construct an argument, shouldn't an argument be carefully worded?
Yeah, it is, but it's worded weird in a way that you don't normally try and.
Where's the weird wording of it? Everything that begins to exist has a cause of its coming into existence. That's an assertion.
Right, but what so why do you
where's the
say everything that begins to exist? Who says everything that begins to exist? What kind of phraseology is that?
That's an empirical observation about reality.
So tell me how many things do you know that didn't begin to exist?
Thousands.
Thousands didn't begin to exist.
Yeah, thousands didn't begin to exist. Yeah, gods, universes, multiverses.
How do you know that?
It's not. It's a postulation. It's an assertion. Do you understand? So you said earlier that you said. Did you say you had a degree in philosophy?
I have my bachelor's degree.
Right. Okay. So
it's understand a dichotomy.
You understand
for which there's no reason to assume.
Where's the dichotomy? A dichotomy is where you present
it implies that there are things that didn't begin to exist when we have no evidence that that's true.
Right. Okay, so Sean Carroll, you know who Sean Carroll is, yeah?
No.
Oh my goodness. You know who Lawrence Krauss is, yeah?
Yes.
Cool. You know that some cosmologists propose something that did not begin to exist. Yeah?
Okay.
You accept that?
I accept that some cosmologists may assert that.
Right, so we do know of things which are proposed that did not begin to exist. Because cosmologists do it with the universe. Some cosmologists say, hey, you know what? The universe is eternal.
Is there no
beginning?
Is that a well accepted and
It doesn't need to be. If you're constructing an argument, you have to, in your argument, when you're constructing your premise, you have to carefully word your premise to deal with every possible objection that could be raised against your premise. If not,
Right.
it's going to fail.
Okay.
So when you're constructing the Kalam, everything that begins to exist, okay, so what kind of things are proposed that did not begin to exist? Well, God is proposed as something that did not begin to exist. The universe is proposed as something that did not begin to exist. Energy.
Actually, most cosmologists believe that the universe did come into existence at one point.
Right. Well, that's interesting, because in his most recent debate with William Lane Craig, Sean Carroll, who is a physicist and a cosmologist, he said that most of the models for the origins of the universe postulate an eternal universe. A universe
Okay, that's fine.
That's beginning. So, whoa. You said that's fine, but you just made an assertion of knowledge that most cosmologists say the opposite. So,
okay,
what were you founding
perhaps
that?
I was mistaken. I'm not a cosmologist,
or
and I'm not well read in the literature.
Cool. Well, or perhaps you were just trying to make bullshit up to try and give yourself some credibility in this. Okay.
No, my understanding was that the most well accepted theory is the Big Bang theory, that postulates that the universe began however many billion years ago.
That's only one theory. There's Sean Carroll, in his debate with William Lane Craig, presented 17 models of the universe.
Okay,
17.
But which one has the most acceptance in?
The most acceptance doesn't equal the truth.
No, it doesn't equal the truth.
Right, exactly. So you can propose whatever you want, and if you're going to present an argument, you have to word your argument so that it's not subject to easy objection. So William Lane Craig, when he's constructing that argument, he knows that God is something that's proposed that exists but did not begin to exist. He also knows that the universe is something that exists but by some people is proposed as not beginning to exist. The matter is another example. Some stupid people will say matter is eternal, or energy is eternal without beginning or without ending. So the wording of the Kalam is very precise so that it doesn't make the error of missing out things that are proposed to exist but without beginning. Because obviously, if something exists but did not begin to exist, you have to account for that in your argument. So he's saying everything that begins to exist has a cause. Something that does not begin to exist obviously has no cause because it never began to exist.
Okay.
So rather than your misunderstanding of the first premise that it's weirdly worded, that's what you said.
Well, I understand why it's weird. I understand why it's weirdly wording. I understand that.
But it's not weirdly worded at all. It's precisely worded.
Okay.
It's precisely worded to take into account propositions of things that do not begin to exist, that obviously would not have a cause.
I would contend that it's worded precisely in order to leave a gap there, so that they can later assert that one thing that does not have a beginning is the God. So it begins with the conclusion that it's trying to reach.
Absolute nonsense, because if it was doing that, then it would only have one possible thing that could fill the gap.
Okay.
God. That would be special pleading. That would be arguing a question or begging the question.
I think that's what it does in part.
It doesn't, because the universe is another example.
Okay.
So there's at least two things that could fill the gap of things that do not begin to exist and therefore are causeless. So it can't be special pleading for God, and it can't be begging the question of the conclusion, which is God, because the premise includes something else, the universe, which is proposed as being something by some cosmologists in science, something that did not begin to exist, therefore is causeless. And again, if when you watch this video, the 10 worst objections to the Kalam, you're going to find that as one of the 10 worst objections. And this is because your criticism, your critique of the Kalam cosmological argument, it's not founded on any good basis. You've filled your head with internet nonsense and not studied the actual argument. You've been lazy. If you actually studied the argument, and here's another question. Philosophically informed atheists and theists have challenged the Kalam cosmological argument. Okay, so this is professional philosophers.
Okay.
Of the same level as William Lane Craig. Okay? Why is it that not a single one of them present that kind of objection to the Kalam?
Matthew, again, this level of intellectualism,
which is about the form of the argument. Why is it these professionally qualified, trained logicians and philosophers never question the structure of the argument, that it's in valid logical form? You think they're stupid? You think you're smarter than these philosophically informed professional people?
No, but I don't need to be smarter, Matthew. All I need to do is to apply.
But the thing is, though, the burden of proof is then upon you to present your argument to peer-reviewed philosophical journals for acceptance and then response. Earlier on, I seen a post put in. I was going to comment on this on my Google Plus feed. Comment. Let me see if I can quickly find the post. Okay, this is what it's called: Intelligent Design. Biologist Douglas acts on facts against evolution. Okay, and then we have this guy, this biologist guy, apparently presenting an objection against evolution, or the theory of evolution, not evolution itself, the theory of evolution. Okay, so it was posted by True Empiricism and had some positive follow-up comments by a guy called Tommy Hall, both who are young earth creationists. Okay, so I put in the comment, hey, that's an interesting proposition the guy's putting forward. Then I asked this question: where has he submitted this proposition to scientific peer-reviewed journals? And what has the response been? No replies that are worth anything at all. So the one response from Tommy Hall was, oh, well, listen, it doesn't matter about that. It's up to the evolutionists to be looking at this subject matter. And I said, no, you get it wrong. The burden of proof is upon the person making the assertion. So if you make the assertion that the Kalam cosmological argument is begging the question, and you're going against the world of professional philosophers, both theists and atheists, none of whom make that allegation or charge, then the burden of proof is upon you to present your case to them, see if it gets accepted for peer review, and then get response from professional philosophers. You know, and I know, that the likely response to be that, if you were so stupid as to try and even present that to a peer-reviewed philosophical journal, you would get a very terse response from that saying, hey, son, go and learn some basic logic.
Well, I don't know that I would be dished that kind of criticism, but
that's how dismissive they would be.
That's fine, but you know what? I'm not a professional philosopher, Matthew. I'm a layperson.
You're not even well informed on logic or philosophy, because anyone
I think I'm pretty well informed on logic.
If you were well informed on logic, you would not be attacking the Kalam cosmological argument for begging the question, when anyone looking at the premise and thinking about two things that could possibly fit the bill, would then say, well, okay, because there's two things there, God, the universe, then it can't be special pleading for God.
Okay, how does the Kalam
and it can't
rule
be
out the
begging
universe?
question, and it can't be begging the question, having the conclusion in the premise, because it doesn't mention God in the premise. It allows for God, but it also allows for something else which would exclude God. So it can't be begging the question, and it's not special pleading. So there's no problem with the structure of the Kalam. Professional philosophers know that, and they're not thick enough to try and attack the Kalam on that basis. Premise 2 of the Kalam, the universe began to exist. There's 5 lines of evidence put forward for that. What are they? What are the supporting arguments for premise 2?
The Big Bang Theory is, I would say, is one.
No, it's not.
No?
The Big Bang Theory is the expansion of the universe. What does William Lane? What are the 5 supporting evidences William Lane Craig puts forward for premise 2? This is you that's listening to William Lane Craig. Well, because
Matthew,
every time he presents the Kalam, he presents the supporting reasons for believing premise 2.
Is the Kalam or the Leibnizian argument, are any of these arguments for the existence of God, did any of them convince you that there is a God?
Of course they do.
Both of them are strong persuasive. How you came to believe that there was a God?
No, this is how I came to rationally
defend your belief.
No, not defend. This is how I came to rationally accept that even if the God I believe in, the God of Christianity, did not exist, that God still exists.
That rationally, God exists.
Yeah, God. Yeah, God being identified as the first creator of the universe, a personal creator of the universe. That God exists.
And why do you say that it's a personal creator?
Well, you said you're familiar with the Kalam. This is all covered off in the Kalam by William Lane Craig.
I'm asking why you, Matthew Bell.
I believe it because I'm persuaded by the arguments presented by William Lane Craig for it being a personal agent.
Why do I need to turn to abstract philosophical arguments to come to the understanding that a personal creator
Because we're dealing with
exists?
A metaphysical proposition. We're not dealing with something in the physical world. We're not dealing with physics or biology.
He obviously had, if this being that you're talking about is responsible for the creation of the world and had whatever kind of interactions previously.
Listen, you dumb fuck. The God of Deism has no personal interactions with the universe. None.
Right. Is that the God that you believe in?
End of story.
Is that the God that you believe in?
Wow. I mean, you are thicker than I gave you. You are actually thicker on these arguments than I gave you credit for.
Is that the God that you believe in? Do you believe in the God of Deism?
Yes, that's my primary belief in God. I then believe, second to that the identity of that God is the God of Christianity based on other separate arguments for that God being the God who exists.
But that's not the deist God.
The deist God, all the Kalam gets you to is a God exists.
That's fine, but what I'm asking you, Matthew...
a first creator, a personal creator of the universe exists. That description of God contradicts nothing in the description of God in Christianity. There's extra material to be added there through supernatural revelation. There's no inconsistency with believing in the God, a personal creator. That's involved in believing in the God of Christianity. The God of Christianity is the personal creator of the universe. There's no contradiction there. There's no division. There's only further arguments to give further information about the personal creator of the universe. all
How
based
does the
on...
Kalam get to a personal God?
Read the fucking argument, you dumb fuck. That's what you should have done before you said you understand the argument and you know the argument. You don't. You're demonstrating it for everyone to see on a live open air
Once
hangout.
again, I never
On a live
claimed that.
open air
I said
hangout.
I have heard it and I don't buy
Yeah.
it because
And
I
then,
don't think that it works.
yeah, and then when we look at the reasons why you don't think it works, what do you give us? Oh, the premise one, it's weirdly worded. Oh, it's begging the question. Oh, how does it get you to the God of Christianity? These are all common internet-based objections to the Kalam cosmological argument that not even your fellow atheists who are better informed than you, they would be they would be cringing right now. Anyone watching this right now who is better informed than you are on these arguments will be cringing at your pathetic attempt to demonstrate problems with the Kalam cosmological argument. Because so far, you've only presented nonsense. Easily, demonstrably nonsense. That's all you're presenting. It does not beg the question. It does not seek to get you to the God of Christianity.
Matthew,
it does present argument why the cause must be personal and not just a necessary set of sufficient physical conditions. And the reason for that is, where you have a set of necessary sufficient conditions, the effect always exists contemporaneously with the cause. So you could not have a universe coming into existence if the cause of that was a set of sufficiently necessary conditions. And if it wasn't sufficient, you wouldn't have a universe in the first place, because it wouldn't be sufficient to bring it into existence. And that's all contained in the argument presented by William Lane Craig for this God being a personal creator of the universe.
How does that mean it's personal? So just because it's sufficient...
Because there is only two alternatives. Either it's a set of necessarily sufficient physical conditions, or the only other thing that could bring it into existence would be something that doesn't fit that. And the only other thing that doesn't fit that is a personal being, free agency, a being who could make a decision to do something. So if I have the power...
So why would you conclude that that's the answer?
If I have the power to... Because it's the only one of two... There's only two options there.
Okay.
One of them is excluded because the cause would always exist with the effect, and that would be contrary to the universe beginning to exist as in premise 2. That leaves you only with one other option, a personal agency bringing the universe into existence.
Yeah, I don't accept that. I don't accept that claim.
Who cares if you accept it? The problem is you don't even know the reasoning presented for the claim. You don't know the Kalam cosmological.
How could you possibly give any kind of rational foundation for that kind claim? You're dabbling in things that are in such distant and alien territory.
Let me show you. There's only two. There is only two things which could have brought the universe into existence. Okay, a necessary set of sufficient conditions, or a personal agent freely bringing the universe into existence. Okay.
Well, maybe it's many personal agencies.
Occam's razor shaves that off. Okay. Occam's razor says.
Could be a committee.
Occam's razor says this, okay? All things being equal, you do not multiply entities beyond that which is necessary for the explanation. So if you have...
Well, I think it's necessary that a committee does it because...
If you have one being who has sufficient power to bring a universe into existence, you do not postulate more entities than that sufficient being, one being, to do the same task.
You have no basis for making that kind of claim.
That's what would be involved in postulating a committee, or more than one being. If you have one being who is capable of bringing a universe into existence, That's all you need to do that task. So
Sure.
Occam's razor shaves off committees or thousands of beings doing the same task. Okay?
Ah,
Logic again.
sure.
You who claim to know logic, okay? Postulating and putting forward internet objections to a philosophical argument that
There's no more reason to assume that there's one being than there is to assume that there were many beings.
okay, I'm not going to waste my time with you on this subject, okay? I've just given you the reasons why you would not postulate more than one sufficient being via Occam's razor. If you don't know what Occam's razor is,
I do know what Occam's razor is.
So what does it say then?
It's all things being equal. I mean, essentially, one kind of version of it is that all things being equal, the simpler explanation is to be preferred.
Okay, so if you have one being, one personal being, capable of bringing the universe into existence, and someone says, well, what about a committee of beings doing the same task? Occam's razor shaves it all. It says, no, you don't, the simplest explanation, and actually it says you do not multiply entities beyond that which is necessary for your explanation.
How do you know? You don't have any example, for example, hold on, let me go through this. If I look at a skyscraper and I say, maybe I have no frame of reference for understanding how skyscrapers come to being, I could postulate that it's the simplest explanation to say that one person, one being, was responsible for the construction of that building.
And how does that relate to what you've established in the Kalam? Because at this point, the Kalam has established that the cause of the universe is a timeless, spaceless, changeless, immaterial, very powerful, maximally powerful being who is a personal free agent. So that's the context.
Completely. I mean, just about every single one of those is without any kind of basis or foundation.
Okay, so here we have more ignorance of logic and philosophy and the argument. Let's say at this point you've got to the point of the conclusion. Therefore, the universe had a cause of its coming into existence. Okay? That's the conclusion of the formal part of the Kalam. Then, in the argument, what you do is you do an analysis of what necessary properties that cause has. Okay? So these are properties it must have. It definitely has. So because this thing brought the universe into existence, and universe there is the space-time material reality, all of space-time material reality, that's your definition of universe. Because it brought time into existence, it itself cannot be in time.
Okay,
what
sense does that even make? To posit something that exists outside of time? In what sense can something even exist?
As scientists, because they postulate this in their explanations for the origins of the universe.
Okay.
If the universe began to exist,
we're talking about things that are so abstract and so removed from anything that we have experience with that we have no foundation for even postulating on them.
So what you're
and it's just all you're doing is throwing out terms and ideas that don't have any foundation.
Okay, so let's hypothesize about something, okay? You know that science makes hypotheses.
Mm-hmm.
And you accept that's valid for them to do.
As long as it's something that can be tested.
All right. So, okay, that's great. So, can you show me where the multiverse hypothesis has been tested or where it's capable of being tested?
As far as I know, it's not testable.
Right. So, but wait a minute.
I would say that's not science.
Hold on a second. Scientists propose multiverses, hypothesize about multiverses.
Well, I don't know that there's.
Do
these
they
are these are these are this
hypothesize? Do
is
they
the fringe of
hypothesize?
where philosophy and science kind of
According to
overlap
whom?
or
According
cross.
to whom? According to you? Are you a cosmologist?
No,
What's your training in science?
I have a
None.
bachelor's degree and I had
Absolutely
some very
none.
basic
Exactly. Absolutely
science
fuck all.
courses.
None. And here you are challenging cosmologists and saying that cosmologists who hypothesize multiverse, they're almost fringe lunatics.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Right. So do
I'm saying
some
that what they're
cosmologists?
saying when they posit things like a multiverse, that because it's not testable and because it is so far removed from the universe that we have, as far as being able to and the
Do they hypothesize it? Do they make that hypothesis? Yes or no?
yes,
Is it testable?
no.
Right. So according to what you said earlier, you cannot hypothesize about things you cannot test.
In
But
science,
scientists, no, anywhere.
no. Of course, we can hypothesize all day
Right,
long about
right,
abstractions that and
right. So,
metaphysics.
so what we're doing here then is we are hypothesizing if the universe did begin to exist, if it began to exist, and we're defining the universe as the space-time material reality, then what logically follows from that about the cause?
A giant moth.
Okay, so is that okay? So what is a moth?
It's an incredibly powerful thing that I'm
No.
asserting.
Okay, so what you're doing is you're redefining the word moth now. Because a moth, we know
Right,
what a moth is. We have definitions of a moth. We have the taxonomy of a moth.
right.
We know what a moth is. So you're using a word there, and when you're asked to tell us what that word is, which
It's a
is very, very
metamoth. This is a metamoth.
cool, cool.
It's
So what properties does this moth have?
well, we don't know. It's too far beyond us. But its properties are that it can create universes.
Right. So is it? So did it create? Well, did it create this universe?
Most likely, it seems.
Cool.
Right?
So it must have been a timeless moth, metamorph.
No.
Well, okay. So tell me this: how could any cause be in time and then create time?
He didn't create time.
But you said he created the universe.
Right.
The universe is the space-time material reality. That's
No,
what the universe is.
this moth created time and space separately.
It doesn't matter whether he created them separately or together. That would mean that this
Time
this
existed
cause.
before the moth, and space existed after the moth.
All right. So it never created the universe then. So what we're doing
No,
is,
it did create the
okay,
universe. It
people
created.
who are looking at this, people who are watching this live, I want you to pay attention to how desperate idiots like this have to get to try and attack philosophy and philosophical arguments. First of all, they propose a moth creates the universe. When asked to define the word moth, they redefine the word moth into a megamoth, which is just a super powerful moth. A moth still has the same definition as in the dictionary, by the way. It's a physical being. It's made of material. And therefore it could not create material if it's material itself. And then he says that,
It's not
wait
material.
a minute, it never created, exactly, and now you're getting the point. Any cause of the universe could not have the same properties as that which it created. So it could not be material because it created all material reality.
Why do you assert that? What reason do you have for asserting that?
Because the universe is defined as the totality of material existence. Space, time, matter. That's what came into existence. That's
You have no reason. There's no rational
what's
basis for
premise two?
asserting that...
What's premise two of the Kalam cosmological argument?
Of which rendition of it? William Lane Craig's?
Yeah, we'll go with his. Okay, so which other rendition do you know?
I mean, the classical one is much simpler.
What does premise two of the classical one say?
The universe has a beginning of its existence.
Okay, the universe began to exist. The universe has a beginning of its existence. Same premise. It's only a very slight change in wording there. How are they defining the word universe? What is the universe?
How are they defining it?
Yeah, the universe began to exist.
Space and time and everything right. Material that we
exactly
can observe.
So for that premise, let's say that premise is true, because that's what we're hypothesizing. We're hypothesizing that premise 2 is true. That means that space, time, matter came into existence. The universe had a beginning. Space, time, matter had a beginning. Okay? That means that anything that caused those things to begin to exist could not be space, time, or matter, because it caused those things to exist.
I thought in premise 1 that we decided that the universe might not have a beginning.
Yeah, that's true, but premise 2, by argument,
ignores the
all right, so this is what you're saying.
The fact that you said in premise 1 that the universe was one of the possibilities that maybe never...
Right, okay, so what you're saying is this. This is the guy, by the way, who says he knows logic, okay? What is the form of the Kalam cosmological argument in logical terms? What's the form of it? It's if P, then Q, P, therefore Q. What form is that in logic? What's it called in logic?
It's a deductive argument. I don't know the exact
so that's
name
the
of that
form
specific...
of the argument. That's the form of the Kalam cosmological argument, exact same form. And what that means is, if P, then Q. If the universe, if something begins to exist, then it has a cause of its coming into existence. Okay? So in that premise, which is a standalone premise, we have two things that could not begin to exist: gods and the universe. Okay? Premise 2, the universe began to exist. Okay?
You don't know that. We have no substantial reason for asserting that.
Okay, so again, you say we have no substantial basis for making that assertion. Okay, so again, I'm going to ask you the question. What are the 5 supporting arguments for that premise by William Lane Craig?
I'm not familiar with the 5 supporting premises for that premise, or arguments for that premise.
They're not premises. They're supporting lines of
supporting
evidence
arguments
in support of that premise. So you just said there, we have no basis for making the assertion of premise 2. Is that correct? Did you say that?
I'm saying that there's nothing...
No, I'm asking what you said, not what you're saying now. What did you say?
What is it? You want to argue with what I may have said or may have meant, or do you want to argue with what I actually mean?
Well, okay. So now that you know you're caught in that, tell us what you actually meant and reformulate it into something more credible. So,
what is your question?
Premise 2: the universe began to exist. What's your response?
Why would we assume that?
We wouldn't assume that. If it was an assumption, the argument would fail. Because
why would we assert that?
Well, we would assert that if there's supporting evidence to justify making that assertion. Now, you cannot say...
Okay, so...
No, let me finish. You cannot say that we don't have justification for making that assertion. And the reason you can't say that is because you don't know the supporting evidence given to try to support that assertion, which means you don't know whether it's justified or not justified. You get that, yeah?
I, I there's
Do you
nothing that we
understand
can say.
that?
We don't
Okay,
have enough knowledge or information about the history of the universe, about
okay,
its makeup,
okay.
or
What are the five supporting lines of evidence? You
I don't
don't
know.
know.
I've told you I don't
Right.
know them.
So
I just
three of
by
them,
my
three
own
of them,
understanding of
okay,
what
but
humankind
your own
has a grasp
understanding,
of,
your
I
own
can
understanding has
know
already,
that we
your,
don't have
cool,
the
your
kind of
own
knowledge
all right,
or
right, okay,
understanding of the nature of the
cool.
universe in order to make claims of that size or scope to any
All right,
accurate
okay.
degree right now.
That's very good that you say that because you said you knew Lawrence Krauss. Because
I know who he is,
Lawrence
and I've
Krauss,
heard him make
Lawrence Krauss.
arguments.
Well, he's a theoretical physicist. Are you a theoretical physicist?
No, I'm not.
He's a cosmologist. He's at the leading edge of current cosmology. Are you?
No, I am not.
So he says the universe began to exist.
That's fine. I
So
don't
you
think that
say, so you're now going to say that a leading cosmologist, theoretical physicist at the leading edge of cosmology, when they make an assertion about science, that they are speaking out of tongue. They're speaking beyond knowledge that they have from science.
I think they're making their best guesses, but this is so far
Oh, their
beyond.
best guesses. And on what basis do you make that? What scientific basis do you make that?
Because we don't know what
Okay,
a
but wait
large
a minute.
portion of the
Okay,
universe is even made of.
okay.
We have
Well,
no
that's what we do.
explanations as
It's made
to.
of atoms. Okay,
No,
everything in
you
the
don't know
universe is made of
that.
atoms. We do know that.
No, you
Everything
don't.
everything that exists, everything material that exists is made up of atoms.
How do you
Everything.
know that?
Because science tells us that. That's
How does
what
science tell us that?
science tells that. Oh, so again, I'm going to make appeal here to the viewers of this live on-air hangout. Do you see what the guy's reduced to? Now he's attacking science. Now he's saying, I know better than the scientific community about the universe.
No.
I know
What is dark
better.
matter?
I
What is
know
dark
better.
matter?
Well, dark matter is not the entire. Well, first of all, it's matter because it wouldn't be called matter if it wasn't material.
Okay. And what is?
So it doesn't. So there's no exception to that
I'm not
from
saying that
the
it's not
description of the
material.
universe. And again, what you're trying to do
And
is deflect. Do
and
you
the other
accept?
thing, no.
Okay, I want to ask you a question. What is a valid appeal to authority?
A valid appeal to authority is when there is a big part of it is based on consensus in the scientific community as far as
Right.
within the realm of science. If you're
Okay, so
talking about the subject of science.
So are you claiming that you can speak as an authority
No,
on
but is there
what
consensus
happens
on
in
the issue that
cosmology?
Lawrence Krauss has posited?
I don't
Is there
know.
broad
I've not
consensus?
taken a poll. But what we
I,
do have is we have this. We have an expert in science, a leading cosmologist, a theoretical physicist, agreeing with premise 2. Okay? And we
so
have
yeah, but again,
and then
this is
on the other hand,
not something that is broadly accepted as a scientific fact.
on the other hand, what we have is an internet atheist with no scientific qualifications in cosmology, no philosophical credentials to speak of any note whatsoever, trying to
I
tell
believe
us.
that's true of you as well, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but the thing is, though, when I don't know something, I make appeal to guess who? The experts in the field. I don't claim
But you're appealing
knowledge.
to one expert.
No, I'm not. I already mentioned another expert, and you said you didn't know about him, Sean Carroll. You remember I asked you, do
Okay.
you know who Sean Carroll is?
Yes, I remember that.
Okay. And who was William Lane Craig's last debate with?
I don't know whose last debate
Well,
was.
guess what? Sean Carroll.
I don't subscribe to his newsletter.
It's not a newsletter. You just need to. All you need to do all you need to do is be current on the atheist-theism debate circuit. Just follow Google Plus, add a few theists, get out of the box a little bit. Okay?
I've added you. You're on my Google Plus.
Well, yeah, and basically, unless it's to come and give you an education,
you're not the only one. In fact,
cool.
I actively try to add theists.
Google Plus feed, if I'm on your Google Plus feed, you need to start reading the damn thing, because I posted the debate about Sean Carroll and William Lane Craig. So if you were following,
okay, I must have missed it. I'm sorry. When was this? When did this happen?
A couple of months ago. Just a couple of months ago.
It may have been before I added you.
It's the most recent debate between the two, and the general view of atheists, typically speaking, is that Sean Carroll kicked the butt of William Lane Craig. So it's all over the atheist community. But here we have a single atheist on Google Plus who doesn't even know who Sean Carroll is, but he's telling us about science. Okay, he's telling us what scientists should be saying and what scientists shouldn't be saying. So
that's not what I've said.
If you ever want to
why do you keep trying to keep trying to paint me over?
Well, that's because
like I'm making claims and you're putting words in my mouth.
Because you made the statement about Lawrence Krauss that you're trying to diminish the statement by Lawrence Krauss because he comes out in support of a premise in the Kalam that you're defeating, and you're saying,
no, my statement is that we can't treat it like fact.
No, what you can do though is the fact that a leading cosmologist who is an atheist as well is saying this is what he says. It's a scientific statement to say it began to exist. It's science.
Are there theories on the origin of life, that like abiogenesis?
That's nothing to do with cosmology.
I'm leading to something. Are there theories on abiogenesis?
No, none.
There are none?
No.
Okay.
Not as the word theory is used in science.
No, not theories. Okay, hypotheses.
Well, that's what you fucking used.
Okay, I misused the word and I apologize.
Yeah, of course.
Are there hypotheses?
Yes.
Okay, and if a known biologist, a renowned biologist, poses a hypothesis, do we accept that as truth, and can we insert it into philosophical arguments?
Krauss isn't making a hypothesis when he says that. He says, he asserts, it's a scientific statement to make that it began to exist. It's scientific. We know that. That's not putting forward a tentative hypothesis. That's him asserting what science declares. Even though he disagrees with the Kalam cosmological argument. He's still not so caught up in his desires to defeat an argument that he'll deny science. And yes, there are other scientists who would say the universe did not begin to exist.
I'm not denying science. I'm just saying we have limitations.
Yeah, and you're not qualified to speak about those limitations. You have no scientific qualifications at all to warrant your arrogance in telling us about what science can do and can't do, and what limitations they should be putting on their words, because you know better. You don't know better.
I'm not saying they need to limit their words. I'm just saying that we don't. That doesn't qualify them.
All right. So who should we listen to? You or Lawrence Krauss? Who has more weight on science?
I think we should. What do you mean? Who has more weight on science?
If we're talking about a scientific
Lawrence Krauss obviously has more credentials in science than I do, but I don't think that we should.
So if we're talking about a scientific issue, if we talk about probabilities, what's the probability of a leading theoretical physicist cosmologist being wrong on a subject in his area of expertise against an internet atheist being right?
I'm not.
What's the
I'm not.
probability?
I'm not making an assertion
I
about.
know. Cool, but just answer the question. What's the probabilities? What's the probabilities of you being right and him being wrong?
I'm just saying I don't
Can you
think
answer the question?
that we have enough
Okay.
knowledge or
Okay, you've already said that
understanding.
bullshit. You've already said that bullshit once before. I'm asking you a simple question. What's the probability of you being right on a matter of science over Lawrence Krauss on a matter of science? Is it high or low that you are right? Is it low probability or high probability that you are right?
I don't have to be right. I don't have to be right.
Right. But
I don't have to be right.
Why are you evading just answering the question? If you ask me, hey, what's the probability that
I don't know how to even assess the probability of that.
Well, let me tell you why. This is how you assess the probability, okay? It's simple, okay? You look at what your qualifications are and your expertise are on the relevant field of study, which is cosmology.
What is
the answer to that is nothing, okay? You don't have any expertise or qualifications on the subject of cosmology. So we've got that on one side of the scales, and then on the other side of the scales, we have a professionally qualified cosmologist.
You're familiar with Thomas Kuhn, yes?
You're not going to deflect the conversation as much as you want to.
No.
So on one side of the scales, we have you with no qualifications, no expertise on cosmology. On the other hand, we have Lawrence Krauss. The scales are like this. Okay?
You're familiar with Thomas Kuhn, yes?
How are you going to balance those scales?
Are you familiar with Thomas Kuhn?
No. Now, answer
You're
my
not.
question. I'm not going to be deflected onto another subject until you answer this one.
This is not a deflection. It relates to the nature of science.
First of all,
if you're claiming to have knowledge of science, I can't believe that you're not familiar with Thomas Kuhn.
Yeah, I'm familiar with his writings when he talks about science and when he makes a distinction between methodological naturalism and philosophical naturalism that I made earlier using his definition that you challenged.
Okay.
Until you had to be correct.
What is one of the main thrusts of his book, Revolutions in Science?
Not a clue. Not read the book.
Okay, I highly recommend you read that book because it relates to this. And here is my point with this: science progresses and changes, and things that we hold on, listen. Hear me out. When was
this book published?
1950s or 60s.
All right. Okay. So let's get this clear. This is what you're doing. When we're talking about matters of current cosmology, and we have a leading theoretical physicist currently working in the field of cosmology, and you're trying to say, oh no. We need to go back to 1962.
No, it's irrelevant because this is philosophy of science.
No, yeah. Well, no, actually it's not. He's a physicist. Thomas Kuhn was a physicist. Don't you know that?
No, Thomas Kuhn is a...
Okay, let me read from you.
His book is The Structures of Scientific Revolutions.
Let me read this for you from Wikipedia. Thomas Samuel Kuhn was an American physicist, historian, and philosopher of science. So are you still going to try and tell us that Kuhn was not a physicist, that he was just a philosopher of science?
I was wrong.
Of course you were fucking wrong, because again, you don't do your bloody homework. You don't.
Okay, did you do your bloody homework and read this book?
Yeah.
There are things that I know that you don't know.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I did.
And that doesn't make you an idiot. It just means that we have blind spots.
I tell you what I did. But that doesn't mean... It took me 2 minutes to Google Thomas Kuhn to find out he was a physicist. It would have taken you 2 minutes before you said he was not a physicist to check your facts at the door and to be accurate in your statements. So far in this hangout, I can recall now about half a dozen times now where you've had to say, all right, I was mistaken in that. Oh, okay, I was wrong on that. What does that tell you about your state of knowledge?
It tells me that I'm human, and it also tells me that I'm honest.
It certainly tells you that you have a degree of honesty, okay? It also tells you you're not well informed on these subjects, which is what I've been claiming from the onset, okay? You're trying to pit a physicist from 1962 against a physicist
but the book that I'm talking about doesn't relate to physics as
then it has no relation. Then it has no relation to cosmology.
About the history of science and philosophy of science.
And it has no relation.
The point that I'm trying to make, if you listen to me and stop trying to talk over me for a minute, the point is that theories change, and when we have theories that are based on things that are much more removed and less concrete for us, I think that there's a much greater likelihood that we will come to different conclusions and have to revise our theories.
And as soon as the evidence comes apparent that the universe did not begin to exist, as soon as we have evidence for that, you can then talk about premise 2 being false. Until such time, we go with what the scientists or what some scientists are saying about the universe. And we have Lawrence Krauss, we have Alexander Guth, and the Alexander Vilenkin, Alan Board and Guth theorem, which says any universe which is in general expanding has a finite past. Otherwise, it had a beginning. Okay? That's 4 cosmologists. 4 cosmologists, all stating the same thing. Again, and so that's all supportive of premise 2 of the Kalam cosmological argument. Science supporting premise 2 of the, and that's only one scientific support. There's 2 other scientific support that you don't know about. And there's 2 philosophical lines of support that you don't know about. So we've got 5 lines of evidence. We've got 5 lines of evidence. No, we've got 5 lines of evidence in support of a premise, none of which you know, and you have the audacity, in your ignorance of the evidence, to assert that we cannot say premise 2 is true. In ignorance of the evidence... That's true,
yes. I assert that we cannot know that it's true.
And I
also would assert that we can't go on from there.
With you asserting that it's false, okay? That means
I'm not asserting that it's false. I'm just not accepting that it's true.
If it's not true, it's false.
I don't know that it's true.
Well,
so you're trying to assert that we know it's true.
So first of all, you say, I said you're asserting it's not true. You said yes. Now you're saying we don't know if it's true. Okay? But to know if something's true or false, what do you need to do? So if you have a hypothesis or a proposition and you want to know, is that true or false? Or can we know that's true or false? What do you need to evaluate?
In what area?
Okay, I'll make it simple for you, okay? You need to evaluate the evidence. Yeah?
Okay. We don't have all the evidence to evaluate here. Okay. We have a very small...
No, we don't. We have 5 lines of evidence in support of that premise. You don't know those 5 lines of evidence. So before you can say that we don't know, you not knowing is fine, you're ignorant. But before you can say we don't know, you've no justification for doing that. Because I do know the 5 lines of evidence, and I'm persuaded that they support premise 2. You don't know them, so you have the obligation to go and educate yourself on those lines of evidence, and then come back and tell us whether or not premise 2 is true or false. What's wrong with that?
I'm sorry, my wife was just got home, and I'm going to have to let you go here.
Okay, amply demonstrated the title of this hangout, Matthew Bell educates, whatever your name is, job done, ignorance displayed, all over the place, ignorance displayed about all the theistic arguments for the existence of God, about logic, philosophy, and science. You're an ignoramus, okay? You need to educate yourself further if you want to have any credibility in the atheistic community,
I'm
or
not
as
looking
some
for
sort,
I'm not looking for
or
credibility
or
among.
or as someone, who has a rational basis for calling themselves an atheist. You don't. Enjoy.
Since this is my hangout and I have at least a minute or two here, I would just like to say that I don't need to have all of these deep philosophical arguments. I can just look and say there is nothing to indicate that there is a God. If there is a God, there is no evidence. And just like Matthew just said, you need evidence to assess whether or not something is true. And there's no evidence of there being any involvement of any gods uh, active in this world that we can uh, view and test and see around us. And all of these cosmological, ontological, teleological arguments for the existence of a god or gods uh, make big jumps and and try to posit things that we just don't know and may never know in order to try and get there. And it's no more than uh, making a deeper claim of God of the gaps that was used for many thousands of years of human existence when we didn't understand the weather, when we didn't understand the way the earth moved and the sky and things. We created stories. This is just a fancier way, more academic way of doing that, in my opinion. And you all can make up your mind. And Matthew loves to get on and belittle people. He's well studied, and that's fine. But um, it, just common sense is all it takes. Thanks for watching. If any of you made it this far, have a good night.